All right. My good friend Alex, can you tell me your name and where you're from?
Yeah, my name is Alex Clark. I am from Jeffersonville, Indiana. Grew up in Clarksville, Indiana.
Tell me, so this is a new channel called The Divorce Diaries,
Hmm.
where I interview people who have experienced divorce and people ancillary to the experience of divorce.
Hmm.
You don't have an ex wife, but tell me about your co parenting journey. Let's
Wow.
start from the beginning. How did you meet the mother of your child?
Yeah, I met the mother of my child through friends. I guess actually at a bar, and she kind of approached me and just told me, "Hey, you're my neighbor." And to be honest, I just feel like when I moved into my house, I just kind of like mind my own business and just I didn't meet my neighbors. I didn't talk to anybody. So I was thinking to myself, I was like, oh, like that's cool. That's interesting. This person, they added me on like social media. We kind of like talked a little bit, and then one thing led to another.
You mentioned meeting her at a bar. Did you sense or have a feeling you two would procreate at that moment? Did you see marriage in the future?
Whenever we first met, marriage nor children was never part of the plan at all. And I guess you could say we successfully didn't get married. So, but we do have a child together.
Tell me about that stage, your child being born and the excitement or the feelings that, you felt at the moment. When you found out, let's start there.
Yeah. So I think that I'll just not go into a crazy amount of detail at the moment, but like maybe we'll circle back around. But I think at the beginning, our relationship was just turbulent. It was just kind of like, she had a child with another person, and then, they were arguing, and, you're just, as a single person coming into another co parenting relationship, you're like, don't really want to be a part of any drama, right? So you're just kind of pulled back. And I think that was for the most part where our relationship was. Of course, I mean, I think we tried to kind of settle everything, work everything out, figure out how we were gonna like, be in a relationship together. All of which just didn't really work. And so I think we were at the point where we just decided that there was nothing going to be like serious to come from our relationship, and then finding out that you know she was having my son, that was kind of a shock. I think it wasn't that initially that you would just think like, oh my gosh, like I think if people are planning, obviously if people are planning to have a child together and you're in love with someone, of course it's a beautiful thing, to start. But whenever our relationship had just gone bad for so long, and then I found out that she was pregnant, I just kind of thought to myself like, oh shit, we're gonna have to deal with this for 18 years. And I think at the early stages of her pregnancy, I just kind of thought, why don't we just throw this fucking Hail Mary and just fucking try to make this shit work? And we kind of went on a date, and just spending time with each other was just not fun at all. you just you just hang out with somebody, and I always try to be like, respectful or communicate with her in a good way. That was just kind of like, it's not that I don't particularly like you. Like I didn't hate her at the time. I didn't have any like animosity towards her. I just knew that she wasn't really my person. You talk with someone, you meet with someone, and you're like, I have no chemistry with this person at all, other than maybe we both think that we're attractive. That was the kind of the peak of our relationship. And so I don't know what I don't know really what was maybe the issue, but I think what I really surmised was that me kind of coming to a conclusion that, hey, we're not compatible with each other. I think in a way that kind of felt like some sort of like rejection for her. And that's what caused things to be like pretty, even worse in our relationship. To circle back around, to having a child, together, we're back and forth. There's this kind of like really push and then pull closer mentality. And I always kind of like thought to myself when it comes to like, having a child, I didn't know whether or not I wanted to have kids or a kid at all. And I thought to myself, if I really do want to have a child, obviously I want to be in a committed relationship with someone. I, would prefer to be married. I would prefer to kind of set up myself and, be established in a way that I could really be a provider, and because none of that was the case, the relationship wasn't good, career, job wise, everything wasn't set up. I was like, this is not going to be great,
I'm going to circle back in a bit, but I want to take it back to your upbringing. And if you don't want to talk about this, that's fine. How did your upbringing affect your outlook on relationships and marriage?
Well, honestly, being younger, I don't.
Were your parents married?
So my parents were married at a point, divorced when I was like in third grade, somewhere in that time period. It's like young enough to where I guess you don't really think it's your fault, and excited enough that you get 2 Christmases, and so you're like, hell yeah, I got 2 houses now. Like that's pretty fun. But I think that obviously, well, I mean, I don't think from having the experience that I've had, having 2, and being an adult and be able to process it, having 2 hardworking blue collar parents that are trying to make it and be single parents, you don't have the most things, so I think that my early childhood, I grew up not necessarily saying that I was without, but I didn't have a lot of stuff. We didn't go to an expensive private school. We didn't have a lot of extra stuff. It was kind of just like it was this mentality that you need to really like work for what you have and be appreciative of everything that you get. And so I think that early on, from on my father's side, it kind of distilled a point of this like military mentality where things have to be disciplined, and you have to be disciplined. You have to keep everything in order.
For people who are curious, we're in Detroit. You might hear sirens every once in a while.
Yeah. So yeah, you just had to. I think from my learning from my dad, like we would get up in the morning and he would be like, "You need to make your bed, right? You need to go through and come in here. You know where the breakfast is. Get your breakfast together." Things were organized, and they were to the point where like all the things that you would expect from like a father figure in your life, that obviously he went through and provided those. And on my mom's standpoint, I just feel like for the most part, my mom was just, she had a few kids, more than a few, was kind of just, exhausted and tired as any. I mean, I have one child and I'm exhausted all the time, and so I think that, when you look back on everything and you have kids or a kid, you kind of, you start to show people a little bit more grace, whether it be a stranger in public or your own parents, And in general, I think from my mom's, standpoint, I spent a lot of time with her. we didn't particularly like get along, but to me, I felt that there wasn't a particular reason on like why we didn't get along. You know, I kind of was active in sports. I just hung out with my friends. I didn't really do anything too crazy. We would just get into these back and forth debates and arguments. You know, we've there honestly, and there was a lot of childhood trauma, that I went through, and went to therapy for, worked everything out. But in the short of it, I just ended up not living with both of my parents, when I turned 16, and then fast forward was just kind of like chilling with my friends, crashing on their couches, just really trying to figure it out, get through high school, and get a job. And so that was kind of my mentality into the world. A lot of people, because I had to quit sports. I really enjoyed doing cross country and running track, and among other things. And stopping that, and when I told a lot of people, my story in my early 20s, they just thought, oh, well, you kind of like, you had to grow up fast. No wonder you like bought a house at 21, and you know all these other adult things about your credit and your credit cards, and how to utilize stuff and open a business. So yeah, that's that's it.
Did your so I know you and have had off-camera conversations.
Hmm.
So this is going to tie into future talking points.
Hmm.
But you mentioned growing up in two households as a
Hmm.
kid. Did your parents talk negative about each other? And is that something you're conscious of with your own child?
Yeah, I actually don't feel that that was as much of a thing as some people make it out to be. However, I'm sure they still had their feelings, but by the time that I was old enough to be cognizant of that you know people are not together for so long, and you just kind of away from a person that you don't like for so long, and not that you potentially like, don't like them anymore. It's just time passes, and the feeling of resentment kind of fades away.
Time.
Yeah.
So I know you and know that you've been an entrepreneur and entrepreneurial for quite some time. During the pregnancy, how did the pregnancy and relationship affect your life, business, and well-being, being as though you and the mother of your child weren't, necessarily on the same page, let's call it that?
Yeah, I think that going back into our relationship, I mentioned that certain people aren't compatible, and I think that for the most part in our relationship, that I was trying to be like, I was trying to be a provider in a capacity where it would be, one second. But basically, I just try to be a provider in this relationship, and very, very nurturing. And so, like, one thing that I would do oftentimes, and it wasn't like, financially supporting anything. We had our own separate households, but I would like almost interrupt my workday to like go grocery shopping, to make a fresh meal, because that was one thing that was like very important to me, And you talk about like people's like love languages and whatnot. And I think for me, being able to like provide that active service for someone, especially someone that like you're good at something, if somebody can go through and like provide that shows like a lot of time commitment. But I think in this relationship, it just gotten to where I felt to a certain capacity I wasn't being appreciated. I'm kind of doing like this split shift where I'm waking up early in the morning, going to the office, working with my business partner, and then I would stop, have like a 3-hour extended lunch because I had to go shop, cook something, and just do whatever. And I'm like, I'm doing all this stuff, and also a learning experience relationship wise, because just because you're just going out of your way to do something in a relationship, it's kind of like with business too. Just because you put a bunch of labor in doesn't translate to value. You know, so like really in the same way, whenever you're gonna like be in a relationship with someone, you should kind of like ask them what it is that they need or what it is that they value. You know, in the same way when you're working on a business and you're entrepreneurial, you shouldn't just expect to get paid a certain amount of labor. You should really ask what are the pain points, you know. But I think through just through business development, you know, fucking things up, you know, being successful in some areas, you just kind of start to figure things out and put things into place. And you know, of course, this is going to sound like very like stereotypical, but of course, you learn more from things like fucking up pretty bad, you know, because the worse things are, I feel like it just pushes you to a point where you have to do something different. You know, it's almost a forced change mentality. And so with the pregnancy and everything not going well, I think that there was a certain component of my business to where I was so complacent. You know, things were going well for so long, you know, something just had to get fucked up for me to be propelled forward. And that's kind of how I looked at this opportunity, you know, just to be like, okay, well, I went through the calendar and I looked at so much, you know, marked so many dates off, and I'm like, I have 6 more months until my son is here, and I need to have X, Y, Z done before then in preparation. So that means I'm going to have to go through and, you know, get more clients or pick up a second job, whatever I needed to do. I just knew that there was going to be a whole lot less time, you know, and a whole lot less energy in order to prepare for the business. So a lot of things needed to be accomplished, you know, in that moment. And I often tell people, like, I've been part of a few business talks, and, you know, they ask, how do you feel being a new father and whatever? And I'm like, I think that, you know, it's also, you know, brought me closer to my family. You know, it's helped me repair a lot of relationships, you know, with them, really mainly my mother. And I think that that it's like those things, like, I guess, that you don't really predict, you know, and then it's made things like, you know, it's made me be able to compartmentalize more on and sort things out and find what really is important in life, you know. I just feel like you when you're younger and you're in your 20s, you're of course going to be grinding and, like, you know, trying to make some shit happen, and then eventually you're just thinking, like, well, what the fuck is the point of doing this, you know? And I think that having a child, like, lets you realize, like, okay, this is the point, you know, this is something I'm working for actively every day, and in a way it's rewarding. And I think that sometimes I would just I think I have like a threshold from stress. I always just tell people, I'm like, I'm just at my capacity, you know. And it's not that before, with only owning a business, I wasn't at my capacity. I was 100% at my capacity. Everyone who runs their own business and is just trying to fucking scrape by, you're just worried about different shit. And then having a child, it kind of like, it just pushed other shit out of the way. So I'm like, whatever. Other shit just doesn't matter. You know, have more new important stress. And then in a way, I think that kind of, it helps propel your business forward, because you're not so focused on the minutia, little small bullshit things. You're really only focused on the things that matter. And again, you're just better at utilizing your time.
What's the status of, it looks like you're thinking.
No, go ahead. I'm thinking about what you're saying.
What's the status of the relationship with you and the mother of your child today?
As of today, it's great. Sunshine and rainbows. You know, I don't know. I mean, I think to a certain point, like, I mean, of course, you know, you're with somebody and then, you know, you're really with somebody and you're trying to make things work and you have a baby fucking shitting everywhere and, you know, crying all the time in the middle of the night and you're like not, you know, getting any sleep. And then you're like, fuck. And then I got to wake up next to this person I don't like. You're like, I'm joking. No, but I think that, you know, we've spent a lot of time apart from each other. And for me, like being away from this person for so long, I feel like there's a an indifference, you know, like to in our relationship. However, we would 100% have not reached the point of being cooperative, you know, in any capacity. To be honest, I just feel like the best way because I had, you know, a conversation with, you know, friends, other parents, you know, women I've dated, other people with kids, but although like certain people like I mean they may have like good advice, like every situation is just so like unique. And with our relationship, I just felt like, or like when I'm talking about a relationship, I mean our co-parenting relationship. I think that a lot of our success in co-parenting depended on, or it depends on me being complacent and or submissive. Complacent in the sense that I just kind of have to just say, you know what, you're the leader, you know what you're doing, you know, and then kind of go from there. And submissive also from just, you know, really just saying, yeah, you're right, you know, and I'm wrong, you know, and that's, I mean, it takes a lot, you know, it takes a lot to just do that, especially, you know, you're a business owner, you grow up by yourself, you just gotta just say, yep, whatever, you know, you win, I submit. And I feel that a lot of us kind of going back and forth at the very beginning was me just being hard-headed because there's some things that we're kind of going back and forth with that's like, I don't know, what diapers are we going to use today? And like, whatever. And these are like just such small, insignificant battles that I'm like, you know what? As long as his ass is getting wiped, we don't even need to have a fucking discussion about this. You know what I mean? Like, it's just so irrelevant, you know, in the grand scheme of things. And so, also, I think that there was some contingency in the relationship on how likely the mother of my child would be willing to co-parent with me by what was in it for her. And so there's just this constant trade-off. Either you know, one example, you know, one example is just like, oh, hey, well, you know, you want me to do this for me, or you know, I'm looking to get married to somebody, and so if you are kind of are fulfilling that role, then of course things are going to get easier and smoother, you know. But if you're not going to do that, then fuck you, and you know, I'm going to burn this fucking house down. So there was like no in between in that, and so I felt like over time that part of the relationship would just kind of like more so just fade away. I'm like, if I'm just like not around as much and you know I'm always working out of town and you know just stuff like that, I just kind of thought like, hey, well, this thing's going to go away. But I'm like, I don't necessarily think that it did until we had to have this like hard conversation. And so I think that after talking about things a million times, that eventually that kind of like feeling will like fade away. And the only thing like I could just, you know, I just always had to reiterate, I'm like, I'm just a single dad trying my best, you know. But yeah, and you know, so I think really just actually those are the main, like probably the two main things. Just knowing when to just like fight a certain battle, and then just knowing how to like walk through, your relationship. Things would probably be a whole lot smoother if you are steadfast on your boundaries that you set initially. So if you are not together, like, don't try to be together at any capacity. Just go ghost and don't like have any conversation. And I feel like that's kind of like where, to circle back around to the main topic, that's really where we're at in our point now. Like, we have very limited communication only on like a parenting app, and it's like, somehow it's still stressful even with little communication, but it's definitely better, in comparison. Like, we've moved mountains in our relationship. So, well, for the most part.
There's a saying, there's three sides to a story. His side, her side, and the truth. Oftentimes, and I'm not talking about your situation specifically, but oftentimes when someone hears a story, they'll hear one side of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, from your point of view, what would the mother of your child say about you? What are the issues, the gripes,
Mm-hmm.
What would she say about you, whether you agree with it or not?
Yeah, so just a couple things off the top of my head. I think at the very beginning of a relationship, like I said, I don't think that there was any particular intention on being kind of like serious. And I might forget a bunch of shit, but I've fucked up a lot of relationships in order to know, like, really how to articulate my feelings and my emotions. And we just had so many situations that, just I had the father of our other child just like message me on social media and just, talk to me about what she was doing and yada yada. And I'm just like, dude, I don't care about any of this. And also too, like, if you feel you need to message me, and I told her the same thing. I'm like, if you feel you need to message me, or he feels he needs to talk to me about this and this, you guys aren't really that broken up, Like, there's obviously something else going on, and even if it's just you two stressing each other out, that's really too much for me. And so I kind of just was like, well, I'm gonna go do my own thing. And oftentimes I felt that when I would communicate something like that, it would just be like, okay, well, I get that. And, a couple days later, well, I've thought about that and I'm really going to work on that. Can we be together now? And I think that there was just so much back and forth, there was so much back and forth with that. Like, we would be what I thought, like, very clearly broken up. And she would just say, oh, well, no, we weren't broken up. We maybe have our hardships in our relationships. Like, he just left and hasn't talked to me in 2 weeks, but we're fine. We're fine. We're going to get through it, and he's going to be back over my house, again, and yada, yada, amount of time. And so she would often just be like, well, I'm out with people and friends at the bar, and, she would just say, oh, well, he's out cheating on me. He's out doing this and that. He's just talking to other women. And I feel like I would just have that conversation with her again, just like, we're not together, So that would be like, I think that would be like one of the main points in our relationship. That was, it obviously wasn't a problem with us like hanging out and stuff all the time, but it would be something that was communicated, oftentimes like with, I feel like to her friends, she would mention things about that, but it wouldn't, that's number one. Number two, let's see.
A different way to phrase this question, maybe a follow-up question.
Yeah. So, I think the main things that she would say about me are that, that I'm not committed. I was never committed to our relationship. I was always back and forth, but I would, I don't know how much of a relationship that we had. And then two, that I am, I'm so crazy and I'm just doing all kinds of wild stuff, all the time. And whether that be us getting into an argument, like, again, it would just be like, I think for the most part, really simple, stupid shit. But we get into an argument and she'd be like, he's just crazy. He has this viewpoint on whatever, or just the stuff that he does. Like, he's a business, like, I mean, from my perspective, I'm a business owner. So she's like, he just sleeps all day, yada, yada. I don't know, that I'm not working hard. I don't know, just because we work hard in a different capacity, just stuff like that.
As a father myself, I like to speak on fatherhood and uplifting dads, right? You mentioned that your dad had kind of a military perspective in raising you. What lessons did you get from your dad? And in retrospect, do you see your dad as having made sacrifices during your childhood?
Yeah, I think that, well, I really thought about everything that had happened in, my childhood a long time ago. And I really appreciated all the stuff that my father had done. I think with my mom, one, like, we have a pretty big family, and so the fact that my dad, my mom told me my dad had adopted me and did a bunch of things, and I'm just like, man, that's a huge sacrifice. I think for one, somebody stepping up and like taking care of someone else's kids is a crazy huge, sacrifice. I mean, as far as my relationship goes, I couldn't today see me like, maybe if I was like really serious and like married someone, but if I just meet someone, that thought, I feel like initially is so far removed that you're gonna take care of their kids. That just seems like a huge, for one, it's a huge commitment in general. So that was like one thing that I know I was always like very appreciative of. The fact that he's like so involved with my son and super helpful, like, that's great. Those are all amazing things. So.
I don't have an outro or closing questions, being as though this is my first interview for this new channel.
Yeah.
Just in closing, unless you want to talk about something, what's the future outlook for the relationship with the mother of your child and the family? What does the next 5, 10, 15 years look like in a perfect world?
I think that in the next like 5 years, my son's, we're gonna get him in a good school. We're gonna agree on that. Hopefully, get him into solid daycare. We're both able to really kind of work out a schedule. I think it's like the main thing is just kind of working out a schedule that is really cohesive for the success of both parties. Even if that means one party, has to make like somewhat of a sacrifice. I want the opportunity and playing field to be as level as possible. I want to help out and then pull my weight in whatever capacity, which I think a lot of that is done now in terms of support and then time with my son. Like, we split the week like literally in half. I think that Going forward, there should be like a whole lot more focus on my son. You know, I feel that, I mean, we had a conversation over wings, and we were saying that there's just like, from one perspective or from a dad's perspective, you know, you may feel very self-sacrificing, even if the world sometimes doesn't, you know, see that. The only thing that you kind of feel like sometimes is that you have your kids or kid, and I think oftentimes men will put their happiness aside, you know, and make sacrifices for what we feel like is the greater good, you know, and whatever that is, and the other on the other end of that spectrum, there's someone, you know, or a person in a relationship who is consistently sacrificing everything else for their happiness. And I hope that in whatever point, you know, even 10, 15 years, or it's hard to even like imagine this utopian thing whenever we haven't gotten to that point where everything feels altruistically about our child, you know, and that's long-term future where you know, I would ideally hope everything to be, and from there, the consistent evolution where both people successful, you know, financially, physically, mentally. Those are all super important things. I mean, you have to like level up to some capacity, basic needs met, and then focus on those other things in life. So hopefully that's a good, you know, a solid answer. I don't know.
There's no wrong answer. It's just
Great.
just talking. In closing, if you have anything in your mind, anything you want to talk about, anything you feel as though I didn't cover,
Yeah.
just give it to me.
Man, I'm like, the other day, we're going to post this to social media,
YouTube.
YouTube, because I was always, you know, we had this conversation the other day. Did I tell you? I did tell you that like my son's mom, she just posted me to this "Are we dating the same guy?" page in Louisville, right? So she posted me, you know, talking about an incident, like talking about past criminal charges and mugshots, and just trying to talk straight shit about me, you know. And it's, to me, I feel that our relationship, I'm talking about like a lot of the turbulent stuff that happened in our relationship, and I'm not blaming any particular person. However, there was so many opportunities, you know, that I had, and I chose to be the bigger person in this situation because I really didn't want to mess someone else's life up and mess up their life with a kid. So I just chose to be like, no, I don't want you to go to jail. I don't want you to deal with things in whatever capacity. And I think that for one, me allowing, that's a huge red flag that I even stuck around through all the shit that I did. It's like embarrassing and it's demasculating, but like I think that any dad or any, you know, younger person in a relationship and they're dealing with crazy shit, I'm like, they just need to like leave. They need to run like just fast before shit ever gets to that point, you know. Especially being like a minority in whatever situation, you know, you dating interracially. There's like so many layers to it, but there's just more shit where shit's gonna boil down to where 100% the pussy was not worth it. And it doesn't matter how good that it was or wasn't, you know, it just wasn't worth, you know, your livelihood. And so, you know, that's a huge thing to go through and like focus on. I think more, you know, just for one, so much stress and so much other shit you have to move on from. But that's just another component, you know, another capacity, that, you know, another, you know, thing to focus on.
This is the Divorce Diaries. Alex, thank you. See you next time.
Appreciate it, man.